My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. 3 words destroyed my 12-year marriage. I want out. My husband divorced me through a text message the same day I lost my six-figure job. He thought I was finished. He had no idea I was about to build an empire that would crush him. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, stay with me. This is my story of how I turned the worst day of my life into the greatest comeback he never saw coming. And before we start, hit that subscribe button because you'll want to hear how this ends. Trust me, you won't believe what I did. My name is Candace Thompson, and I need to take you back to understand how perfect everything seemed before it all fell apart. I was 38 years old, living what everyone thought was the dream life. I had worked my way up from nothing, and I mean nothing. Grew up in a neighborhood where people didn't make it out. But I was determined. I put myself through college, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, grinding until my feet bled. And it paid off. I met Trevor when I was 26 at a networking event. He was charming in that easy way some men are. You know, tall, confident, had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He worked in commercial real estate, came from money, but he didn't throw it in your face. At least not back then. We connected over our ambitions. Both of us wanted more. Both of us were hungry for success. We got married 2 years later, and honestly, those first few years were beautiful. We were building something together, or so I thought. By the time I hit 38, I had climbed my way to vice president of marketing at a major tech firm. 15 years I gave that company. 15 years of late nights, missed family events, sacrificing everything to build their brand. Trevor's real estate business was doing well too. We had the house in the suburbs, the luxury cars, the vacations in Europe. We decided not to have kids because we were focused on our careers. Looking back, maybe that should have been a sign. Maybe he never wanted to be tied down permanently. Everyone envied us. The power couple, the ones who had it all figured out. Except we didn't. I just didn't know it yet. It was a Tuesday when my world started crumbling. I got called into my boss's office at 9 in the morning. The company was restructuring. My entire department was being cut. 24 hours notice. After 15 years of loyalty, of bleeding for that company, of building their brand from nothing into something worth billions. They gave me 1 day. I cleaned out my desk in a daze, carried my box of belongings to my car, and sat there in the parking lot for an hour, crying. I felt humiliated. I felt worthless. Everything I had worked for was gone. I drove home early, which was unusual for me. I expected Trevor to be there since he usually worked from home on Tuesdays, but the house was empty. That was strange, but I was too devastated to think much of it. I just wanted my husband. I needed him to hold me and tell me everything would be okay. I called him twice. No answer. I texted him. Nothing. By midnight, he still wasn't home, and I was sitting in our bedroom, staring at the walls, feeling like my entire identity had been stripped away. Then, at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Finally, I thought. But when I looked at the screen, my blood went cold. The message said, "I want out. My lawyer will contact you. Don't call me." That was it. 12 years of marriage ended in 19 words. I called him immediately, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. The call wouldn't go through. He had blocked me, blocked his own wife. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I spent the rest of that night on the bathroom floor sobbing until I had nothing left. The next morning I was numb, moving through the house like a ghost, and that's when I saw it. Trevor had left his email open on our shared computer, the one in the office. He always logged out, always, but in his rush to destroy my life, he had forgotten. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And what I found broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. He had been having an affair for 8 months. 8 months. With Brittany, my former assistant, the girl I had mentored, trained, helped get promoted. She still worked at my old company, which meant they had been sneaking around right under my nose. but it was worse than just an affair. The emails showed they had planned this. They had waited specifically for me to lose my job. There were messages about how, once she's out of work, she'll be easier to cut loose. His lawyer already had divorce papers drawn up. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was calculated. This was deliberate. And the prenup. God, that prenup. I had signed it when I was 28 and stupidly in love, and it heavily favoured Trevor because of his family's money. I didn't even read it properly back then. I trusted him. What a fool I was. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. I moved out of the house because, surprise, his family owned it. I stayed with my sister Monique in her one-bedroom apartment, sleeping on her couch. I couldn't get out of bed most days. Depression swallowed me whole. The job market was brutal. No one was hiring, especially not someone in their late 30s who just got let go. My savings were running out fast. And Trevor? Trevor was already parading Brittany around town like she was some kind of prize. His lawyer called me in for a meeting about the settlement. I sat there in clothes I had worn 3 days in a row because I couldn't afford dry cleaning anymore, and this man in his expensive suit offered me $50,000. $50,000. After 12 years of marriage. After helping Trevor build his business connections, introducing him to every important person I knew, supporting his career while building my own. The lawyer basically told me I had no leverage. The prenup was airtight. I could fight it, sure, but it would cost money I didn't have, and I'd probably lose anyway. I signed the papers. I had no choice. I took the $50,000 and felt like I was signing away my dignity. 3 weeks later, Trevor and Brittany announced their engagement on social media. 3 weeks. I saw it while sitting in my sister's apartment with my last $200 in my bank account. I stared at that photo of them smiling, her showing off a ring that probably cost more than my settlement, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was angry. No, I was furious. And I decided right then that I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to be a survivor. And more than that, I was going to win. I sat down and made a list. What did I have? No job, no money, no husband, no home. But I had something Trevor could never take from me. I had my mind, I had my skills, and I had relationships. Real relationships with real people who valued me for me, not for the company name on my business card. I had spent 15 years building connections with CEOs, investors, tech giants, innovators. They didn't care about my old company, they cared about what I could do. I reached out to an old colleague named Gerald, who had started his own consulting firm. I was honest with him, told him I was broke and desperate, but that I was also the best at what I did. He took a chance on me, hired me as an independent consultant. My first gig was a small startup that needed a marketing strategy. They paid me $5,000. It was every penny I had left to my name riding on this one project. If I failed, I was done. I worked 18-hour days. I poured everything I had into that strategy. And it worked. That startup tripled their revenue in 2 months. Their success went viral in the tech community. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who had turned this nobody company into a rising star. And the answer was me, Candace Thompson. The calls started coming in. More clients. Bigger clients. I raised my rates to $25,000 per project, then $50,000, then $100,000. 6 months after my divorce, I was making more than my old salary. I moved into my own apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. And then I started my own firm, Thompson Strategic Group. But I didn't want to just consult. I wanted to build something that would last. I identified a gap in the market that everyone else had missed. Tech companies were growing so fast they needed high-level marketing leadership, but they couldn't afford or didn't want full-time executives. So I created a subscription model. Companies paid a monthly retainer to get access to fractional chief marketing officer services. They got the expertise without the cost of a full salary and benefits. It exploded. Year 1, we hit $2 million in revenue. Year 2, 8 million. Year 3, 25 million. I was hiring the best people in the industry. I was turning down clients because we were too busy. And I was just getting started. A private equity firm noticed what I was building. They wanted in. We sat down for negotiations, and I watched these men in their suits assume I'd be grateful for whatever they offered. Instead, I told them exactly what I wanted. I wanted their money, but I was keeping majority control. They could have 40%. I'd keep 60. They thought I was crazy. Until I showed them my projections. Until I showed them the pipeline. Until they realized I was about to dominate an entire industry. They wrote the check, $30 million at a $100 million valuation. I used that money to expand aggressively, acquired 3 competing firms, hired 200 more employees, opened offices in 5 cities, and I was just warming up. 5 years after that text message at 2 a.m., Thompson's strategic group went public. The IPO valued my company at $500 million. My stake was 60%. That's $300 million on paper. The stock soared on the first day. Media coverage everywhere. Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. Everyone wanted to interview the woman who built an empire from nothing. And I mean nothing. Because I literally started with $200 and rage. Within another year, the company was valued at $750 million. I was personally worth over $200 million in liquid assets. I sat on boards of major corporations. I spoke at conferences worldwide. I had become everything Trevor had thought I could never be, everything he had thrown away. And that's when I heard about Trevor's troubles. I ran into an old friend from his office at a charity event. She had a little too much wine and started talking. Trevor's commercial real estate business was struggling. His biggest client was about to drop him. He had been coasting for years on his reputation and on connections that, if I'm being honest, came from me. All those CEOs and investors he had access to. I had introduced him to them. And now that I was back in the picture, more successful than ever, people were remembering who had actually brought value to their relationships. That big client Trevor was about to lose. The CEO was someone I had helped 5 years ago when he was just starting out. One lunch meeting. Just catching up, talking about old times, talking about business. I never mentioned Trevor. I didn't have to. 2 weeks later, that CEO dropped Trevor and signed with a competitor. Trevor lost 40% of his revenue in one day. But I didn't stop there. I quietly reached out to 3 more of his major clients. Just friendly reconnection. Just lunch meetings and coffee chats. I didn't badmouth Trevor. I didn't have to. These people were smart. They could see who the real talent had been all along. Within 6 months, they had all switched to competitors I had recommended. Trevor's business collapsed. He had to lay off most of his staff. His reputation in the industry was destroyed. The golden boy who had it all had become the cautionary tale. Then Trevor had to sell our old house, the one his family owned, the one he had kicked me out of. He couldn't afford the maintenance anymore. It went on the market, and I watched the listing like a hawk. When offers came in, I had my lawyer create an LLC. We bought the house through that LLC for $50,000 over asking price. Cash offer. Trevor had no idea it was me. And then I donated that house to a women's shelter. Specifically, a shelter for women escaping bad marriages. I made sure the press covered it. I made sure Trevor found out who had really bought his precious family home. Around that same time, Brittany left him. Turns out she had been after the money and the lifestyle. When the money disappeared, so did she. Trevor was alone. Broke. Broken. Everything he thought made him valuable was gone. But here's where it gets really interesting. Trevor's family had a separate business, a commercial development company that had been around for 30 years. They ran into financial trouble and needed an investor. They reached out to multiple firms, and guess whose investment fund was on that list? Yes, I had started an investment fund too, because why not? They came to me with their pitch, desperate for capital. I sat through the meeting, asked all the right questions, reviewed their financials, and then I politely declined. Could I have saved their business? Absolutely. Did I? Number. They ended up with a bad investor who drove the company into the ground within a year. 2 years after my revenge was complete, Trevor reached out. He wanted to talk. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but I was curious. We met at a coffee shop in a part of town where nobody knew us. He looked terrible. Aged 10 years, defeated. He sat down across from me and tried to apologize, told me he had made the biggest mistake of his life, that he thought about me every day, that he knew what he had done was unforgivable. I let him talk, and when he was finished, I told him the truth. I told him I had forgiven him a long time ago. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because carrying hate around is exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy. The revenge wasn't about hate. It was about reclaiming my power. It was about showing him and showing myself what I was really capable of. And then I told him something that I could see broke him even more. I thanked him. I thanked him for that text message at 2 a.m. Because his betrayal had forced me to become who I was always meant to be. If he hadn't left me, I would have stayed comfortable. I would have stayed in a marriage that wasn't serving me. I would have stayed in a corporate job that didn't appreciate me. He did me the biggest favor of my life, even though that wasn't his intention. So where am I now? I'm about to close a deal that will put my company's valuation over $1 billion. I'm dating someone who values my mind and my spirit, not my bank account or my connections. I started a foundation that helps women restart their lives after divorce, giving them seed money and mentorship to start businesses. I live in a penthouse that I designed myself, every detail exactly how I want it. And for the first time in my life, I'm at peace. The best revenge wasn't destroying Trevor. The best revenge was becoming the best version of myself. So that's my story. That text message at 2 a.m. was the best thing that ever happened to me. Trevor thought he was leaving a broken woman with nothing. Instead, he freed a powerhouse he never deserved. If you're going through something similar right now, whether it's a betrayal, a job loss, or someone counting you out, remember this. Your comeback is always bigger than your setback, but you have to choose to fight. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. What's a time someone betrayed you and you came back stronger? Share your story. And if this inspired you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real talk about winning in life. Remember, they can take your job, your marriage, your money, but they can't take your mind, your skills, or your determination. That's where real power lives. I'm Candace Thompson, and I'll see you in the next one.